money doesn't grow on trees. Running a sustainable business is just hard, money is like a key thing. If we think businesses perform best when they have good people, and we recognize that good people come in different shapes and formats, then, we need to build environments which reach those different people. We need to make sure that we have environments that include those different people. Some of the partnerships that we've had, they're great brands, great names, great organizations, but they've taken years. Sometimes people think about, sales cycle. I won't say who, but one of our partners, I would argue I've been working with that for 4 years before it happened.
Ashley, welcome to Nexus Talks. For those who haven't heard of you before or want to learn more about you, can you tell us a bit about who you are?
Yeah, brilliant.
And what
Thanks
you do?
for having me. So my name's Ashley Ainsley. I'm co-founder of Colour in Tech, which is a not-for-profit that I set up about, back in 2018 now, so a number of years ago. Really with the objective to try and help people from underrepresented backgrounds get an opportunity into tech. I was really fortunate through my own experience that I had introductions to some great people who've helped me along my journey. As much as I love doing that for other people, I didn't want people to be reliant on knowing me in order to have those same access to opportunities. So I was actually always thinking about how can we bring people together, and how can we create something which would be able to help people even if I wasn't directly involved. And that's really kind of the founding idea and concept of Colour in Tech. So Colour in Tech does three things broadly. One is we run programs to help people, enhance their skills and with their capabilities in terms of making them have the best value add for whatever they want to do, whether that's setting up a business or, working for someone potentially. Second thing is we share what we see. So our news, commentary, events, jobs, opportunities, you name it. But all of those sorts of things. And then the third thing that we do is our events. Now, some of those are smaller, could be 30, 40, 50 people in a room, all the way up to BTF, which is our big event. And this year we had 7,000 people through the doors. So, yeah, one of Europe's actually biggest tech events.
And just in case people haven't heard of BTF before, can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah,
what it
so
stands for?
BTF, Black Tech Fest is kind of the name behind it. But ultimately it's actually about, including people from all walks of life to celebrate the contributions that Black people make to our technology sector, and actually really having a great platform to showcase some of the amazing leaders and inspirational people that we have, across our sector who are doing some really interesting things, offering them a platform to showcase that and normalizing it. But actually also, welcoming other people who work with them and who, support their work to also, share, the stages and do those things. I think as we've evolved the proposition, one of the fears that we always had is that people thought, oh my gosh, it's only going to be a space for certain people. And why we're really intentional about making sure that, we are celebrating the Black community and we are elevating people's voices. We don't want people to feel excluded. So, we want this to be an environment where everybody feels that they can do that. And this isn't just a domain just for one group of people. Because in order to, really champion and progress, people from underrepresented backgrounds and the Black community in particular, we do need to make sure that we are, sharing that with everybody as well. So yeah, we have a number of different stages. We have a number of different kind of exhibitors, organizations like Google or JP Morgan, really fantastic blue chip world leading organizations that are there to really showcase their people, drive innovation through their own technologies and thinking about how to collaborate with people, and in many instances offer career opportunities to folks that are interested in taking them up as well.
We're going to get into why you're so passionate about this and how we got to this stage. But before we do, did you always want to work in tech? Like, I feel like when we're kids, we have really wild dreams and stuff. But how did you even get into this?
The short answer is no. When I was really young, I wanted to be a pilot. But yeah, turbulence and me aren't great. I love flying, but it's probably better somebody else is at the front of the plane when that's all going on. So yeah, I mean, look, I got into the technology industry kind of by accident, like a lot of kind of people of kind of my generation or so. The industry's a new one. If you think about even the advent of the internet, I mean, it's, in terms of commercial use, it's maybe 25, 30 years old. I mean, it's actually not that. And, I am 31 as of recording right now. So, there weren't careers that were long spanning and that were in the tech industry when I was growing up. It wasn't something that people certainly from my background, especially were working in or did or, had roles in. So, I got into technology through, I suppose, partially kind of seeing it solve my real world problems. I remember when I first discovered Wikipedia when I was doing my homework, and I was like, oh yeah, this tech thing is really going to help me out because now I can find out all the information really, really, really quickly. I remember I wasn't, wealthy or privileged enough, I suppose, in some instances to be able to travel as extensively as I can kind of now when I was young. So when Google kind of mapped all the world and did kind of Google Earth, I remember seeing places I'd never seen before. And I was like, don't really know what that tech thing is, but I like it. And that's the sort of thing that I'd like to make happen. And that was kind of a thing all the way throughout university. I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do. Thought about consulting and kind of a few other sectors, etc. But then I got introduced to the fact that Google were hiring interns in London. And again, I kind of just assumed it was a California thing or you needed to code. Like, what was I going to do? Turns out that there are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of, I suppose what we'd say are non-technical roles within the tech sector. And that was something that I was totally unaware of in reality. And I ended up doing one of them. Long story short, and actually I was able to do it. But actually that opportunity wasn't necessarily available for other people. And it's not because I was exceptionally skilled at doing what I was doing. Don't get me wrong, I was good and I'm very good at some things for sure. But there are lots of people really great at other things as well and who didn't necessarily have that same chance that I did. So that's kind of where the color and tech thing came from. It was actually like this tech thing's cool. Loads of people wanted to, be in the same shoes that I was, working in the same companies, or, after Google, I went to a startup, for example, and people were like, how do you get into a startup? How do I do this thing? Startups are cool. And I was like, yeah, it is. And I don't know if I'm the right person to tell you, but like, we need to think about actually, if I can do this, I'm sure there are other people who are probably better at it than me. So, let's think about how we can create opportunities for those folks, and that's kind of the underlying story to the logic of what we do.
Yeah. Why did you care about that, Ashley? Like, where was the passion for helping others and specifically looking at certain communities? Like, why did that factor into your decision and where you've gone
Um,
with your career?
I'll probably say three things. I think one's intrinsically me. I mean, I was that kid that was on school council in like primary school when I was like a monitor when I was in like
Hey.
secondary school. Like I've always done a little bit of charity work. When I was doing the Duke of Edinburgh Award, I was like volunteering in the British Heart Foundation. Like I've always had an element of like philanthropic stuff and wanting to help people bigger than me.
Yeah.
When I come and go, like, can I leave a better impact in the world? Like, that's probably a nice thing to spend your time focusing on. Um, so I think there's that intrinsic part. I think the second thing is, I grew up in a really diverse part of London, a place called Lewisham. And for those who aren't familiar, it's really diverse. You've got some of the wealthiest properties probably in London in some instances. You've got some of the poorest places as well. You've got different ethnic groups, you've got different ages, you've got different, academic successes, schools, all sorts of things. We have a university in our borough, we have a further education college, we have schools, like we have it all in many instances. The River Thames, like, so I was just really used to diversity of lots of things when I was around, if that made sense. And I got into the corporate world, I got into the academic world, and I was like, what's up with this? Why doesn't it feel like Lewisham? And like, why was that?
Mm.
And it didn't strike me as like, oh, these homogenous places were any better. It didn't strike me that these were, I suppose equitable in the sense of like they were designed because that was the best way to do things. It was more like people didn't necessarily have the opportunity. For context, I went to Oxford University. I went to a state school. I didn't pay for my education or anything like that, and I was one of 32 black people there. Now, yeah, I know some black people that I went to school with that got good grades, better grades in many subjects than me that didn't get to go to Oxford. That wasn't because they weren't, just as
Mm.
academically capable or gifted, but because of the challenges, I suppose, around kind of access to that institution and our university sector in general. Um, so for me, I was like, well, actually, like, why is the world of work like that? when I was an intern, I was writing emails. I know people could do that. Like, I know people could do that stuff. So why were they not, given the same access to the opportunity? Because I went to Oxford. To me, it just seems a bit unfair, to be honest, because not everybody could go there. Not everybody good went there anyway. And it kind of just seemed to, an unequitable thing. And I don't particularly like injustice. So yeah, from my perspective, I was like, that doesn't seem right. And well, I can try and help people. I like to, and I want to. And, I think even going back to, I suppose if you look at like a theory of change, and when I studied economics, um, I suppose you can create value from market failure. So, if you take really, really, really basic economics, um, where there's asymmetric information, i.e., people don't have good access to information to make sensible decisions, you get what you call market failure. You get bad outcomes. Basically, you get people. If people don't know how to brush their teeth, they get bad dental hygiene. They get bad health, for example. So let's teach people how to brush their teeth. It's the same sort of thing. Like if we enabled everybody to access great opportunities, we would probably have a more productive society, and that will probably benefit us all. So for me, it was kind of like, well, we've got this situation where the market's clearly failing, and there's lots of talent that isn't getting the access to opportunity. And if we were to do something about that, yeah, there's value to create, and great. That might mean it's commercially sustainable because someone can benefit from that. But more so than I think those people and society will benefit as a whole. And I'd rather live in a society where we're all great and productive and have opportunities than not. So that's why I was thinking about it.
Ashley, in all my years of being an interviewer, a host, a presenter, whatever, I've never heard anyone explain to me how passionate they are about doing good through economics. You are the first person, and I love it.
Well, send me the recording. I'll
Never.
make sure it goes everywhere. But yeah, like there's the rationale. There's an economic.
I love that. That honestly, that's the first time I've ever experienced that. Before I move on to the next question, how was it studying at Oxford?
It was
Be
a mixed bag.
honest.
So there were, I'll say, 3 good, 3 bad. Maybe I can't think of 3. Look, I met some really amazing people that are doing some really good things now. Many of them today are still some of my best friends for sure. And such a concentration of amazing people is really hard to find in anywhere. I had access to a lot of privileged facilities, opportunities. Personally, it worked really well for me. And actually, fundamentally, I'm a nerd. I love studying geography. That's what I studied. Like, I really enjoyed it. It was an unadulterated time to explore something you're interested in. And again, like, there's very few times that you can actually do that in life. And I was really lucky to have that. I think being one of so few people who look like me, kind of gave me a different awakening to the world. I think it taught me things which were helpful in the corporate world, but it's not how I think it should be. If I had my way, I'd, maybe not physically, because, there's a lot of listed buildings, but I'd probably knock down the institution and start again in many ways. I think it's ridiculous that some of the colleges have bigger endowments than the universities of Scotland combined or Wales. That all of that money could be used in our education system in a far more impactful way than it is being used. And that is, a tragedy for me in many instances. So there's that. I did have elements of racism as well. That wasn't great. I looked like any other person from Lewisham walking around as a student, but that didn't fit in Oxford, so to speak. So sometimes I was questioned about why I was in certain places. No doubt because of kind of my skin, not because I didn't look like a student. So that wasn't particularly ideal. And yeah, I mean, it was a challenge. It wasn't easy. But yeah, look, I recognize I had a lot of privilege as a result of going to that place. It's stuff that I definitely worked for. But I I want to take that and think about how I can use that to create more opportunities for other people. And I think that's kind of how I reflect on it. But it was a mixed bag, but I think net positive and certainly very positive in terms of the trajectory of what it's done for my life.
Yeah. I hear a lot from education from friends because I used to be a teacher, and one of my friends actually has a charity to keep students from underrepresented backgrounds in these top universities, because the stats of them dropping out the first year because of the struggles, the change environment, it's huge. And it's so interesting to hear about your experience and how it's not really changed for these top tier universities. Even students now are still facing the same issues. So that's why I really wanted to ask you to see if it
Yeah,
was
I mean, I think
as
it's
bad
probably
then as it
improved
is
a bit.
now.
Like I know, and I've done some work supporting
Yeah.
mentoring, coaching, tutoring in some instances. Some students
Nice.
who have been interested in applying or getting in, or who have been studying there, and I still keep close to some folks who've more recently graduated as well. Um, it's
Yeah.
it's it's not as bad as it was, if I would say that. And I think society moves as well, but
Feel bad.
it's starting from a real low base. I think things like the ACS have become stronger, more embedded, larger, and I think that helps create a sense of community for people. And it does matter, if you're used to eating particular cuisines or speaking a particular language, or you've got a hair type that you want to get some product for. Those things do matter. Um, and some people will be like, oh, well, let's talk about humanity first. Like, I am a human, and this is what my hair looks like. So that's why it matters to me. So for some,
Yeah.
for we had those, but they're stronger institutions now, and I think that's a great thing. But yeah. As I said, I think the quickest way would be to knock the thing down and start again. But yeah, it's been around for 1,000 years. So I don't think I'll get around to that in my time, or at least that's not the history book I'm trying to write. So we'll see as what we can do, in another form.
Yeah. I love the passion. I love the mission. Let's talk a bit more about the challenges that you faced when you started Colour in Tech. What were the hardest challenges and how did you overcome
Um,
them?
I think like most businesses, actually, and Color Tech is a not for profit, but um, we run it like a business. And a lot of people don't really get
Yeah.
that when you talk about charities and not for profits and stuff like that. But I'll be real with people. Money doesn't grow on trees. Like, yeah, there is no magic money
Mhm.
tree. And if you're a charity, okay, yeah, you can ask people for money. It don't mean they're going to give it to you. And there's a lot of charities that ask for money as well. So it don't mean you're the best one or the top of the line or anything like that. So running a sustainable business is just hard. Money is like a key thing. And especially in the sector of what we do, which is, somewhat niche. We're category creating. Like people weren't doing what we were doing before we did it. People didn't understand the challenge or the problem until we started making noise about it. And we had other things. And look, we're now on the other side of the cycle where people understand it and dislike it because of what it is. Um, so look, there have been lots of different challenges at different points. But I think initially getting started, it was trying to find a sustainable business model in which meant that we were able to operate throughout the year without necessarily needing to be reliant on pure philanthropy, because that can come and go. People's kindness you can't take for granted, and grants come and go. And we don't want to ever be dependent on that as an organization, not because we don't like it or we don't want it, but if we're employing someone, we can't tell, I don't want to turn around and say to them, don't have the money, I'm going to have to let you go. And a lot of people write grants don't want to have to do that. So you've got to find different ways. So how do we overcome that? A lot of thinking, a lot of time, a lot of talking to people, a lot of trying to work out through trial and error about like what we can sell and finding a product market fit, condensing a proposition down and helping people articulate that, and yeah, working on it. We started the mission of Color in Tech, I suppose, back in 2016. Um, but it wasn't until maybe 4 years later than that where I was working on it full time. And some people, especially in today's generation, they want to see results, quickly, instantly. And, there are
Very
businesses which
well.
can do a lot in 4 years. But that's not everyone and that's not every business. So, you have to recognize that as well.
How do you see diversity as a driver of innovation within tech companies then? Because it's something you're super passionate about. You looked around when you were working, you were like, none of these people reflect me. Where is the benefit and why are you so
Yeah,
passionate
well,
about that?
I see it as almost like the business case. Like, I think it's just a business case for having good people. Yeah, like that's, I think, the most
Yeah.
basic way to try and still help people who are a bit confused about this whole like diversity, equity, inclusion kind of angle to kind of understand it. And the way I put it is like, look, if we accept that people have lots of different talents across the board, lots of different perspectives that they can bring, lots of different ideas, and that those might come in unconventional shapes, sizes, formats, ways, etc. then, one of the things as a result of that is to understand that, we need to have organizations that are able to appeal to people as a result of that too. You want to have organizations that are able to attract people, who who see that they can, I suppose, bring those ideas, those suggestions, their experiences to the table in a positive way. It doesn't mean I need to bring everything that happened to me last night at the dinner table to work, but I can bring the good things which are relevant to the table, and I can feel that that's included. And, if we think businesses perform best when they have good people, and we recognize that good people come in different shapes and formats, then, we need to build environments which reach those different people. We need to make sure that we have environments that include those different people. And we need to make sure that we're assessing, those people and compensating them and doing all those other things in a fair manner. Otherwise, those people leave. And we've seen um, lots of data over the years where people don't have particularly equitable workplaces and workforces, attrition is high. And what's the business case for keeping your best people? That's the same thing, and therefore I think it's a similar. I think the logic's the same. I think generally where people have environments where those things are the truth, they will be diverse, they will be inclusive, and they will be equitable, and you'll probably have, being a talent magnet and also be able to retain your best people.
Yeah. I think companies can sometimes underestimate how important it is to have a good work environment as well, because you can have the best talent, as you mentioned, but if that talent doesn't feel nurtured or feel comfortable or, enjoy work in some capacity, it's very easy to jump
Yeah,
ship.
and that's the thing. And I say the business case for good people. Good people, even in the economic headwinds that we are, the challenging environment, they will still find great opportunities. They will still get poached. Your competitors still want your good people. Like those people, and it's ones that really do add the disproportionate value adds. Are those, and sometimes those are the outliers. Sometimes those are the people who do differently to the norm, which makes them special and different and sometimes exceptional. But as a result of that, they often need more and have different types of needs as well. So for sure, I think that's definitely part of it.
Yeah. I know it's a really annoying question. You probably get this all the time, but what kind of trends do you think are going to take over next year? I know it's hard because your industry, I feel like, changes all the time, but what kind of insights can you give us, especially for startups
Yeah,
as well?
great question. I mean, one I have to plug. So in Color and Tech, we do a newsletter every
Okay.
week, which I actually still draft, so blame me for the typos. Um, but I will try and use more AI to correct that. But we do predictions every year. So in our next edition, you can find out colourtech.org/newsletter. We do what we said last year, what we said this year. We've got lots of different types of predictions, but I think in terms of like for startups, I suppose there's like some macro predictions and like some more micro predictions, or trends or things that we're seeing. Look, I think the landscape's going to be hard, and I don't want to dress that up, but it's not like maybe the exciting or happy kind of vibe that some futurist will go and tell people, so to speak. But I think we just have to be honest. Like I looked at Atomico's State of European Tech report a few weeks ago. Sentiment is lower than it's ever been in terms of people's optimism for the future. The next 12 months, and it's understandable. Western economies aren't particularly growing outside of the USA. There's a lot of political upheaval, which causes a lot of business turbulence. Debt is expensive and money isn't cheap, in terms of where interest rates are. Consumers' wages aren't massively outpacing kind of inflation and all these other things. And that if you are to ask again, go back to the economics, if you were to ask the business owner what conditions do they want in order to grow their business 10x, you wouldn't put this set of starting conditions in there. So of course there will be people who do successful things. Of course, there will be those opportunities. I think if you're a scale up, I think it's probably a really interesting time, probably post Trump as well, to be thinking about, in terms of an exit, corporates, and acquisition. I think over the last kind of 4 years or so, M&A activity kind of has been a lot slower post pandemic especially. I can imagine that might have an uptake as inorganic growth is kind of an interesting way for companies to do that, especially if they've got a bit of cash aside, and I'm thinking about how best to deploy that. So yeah, I can see that. I think yeah, in terms of it still will be an employer's market. I think we've seen it be an employees market at different points.
Mm.
I think employers will hold more of the cards in terms of there will be more great talent available, probably looking for fewer roles. And as a result of that, it's probably great if you're growing your startup in order, there'll be a lot of capable people. But I think again, a challenge on that will be actually hiring the right people. AI will make it harder to differentiate between how good people are. You know, yes, most people don't do CVs and there'll be interviews, but there'll be tech which helps people coach people on that, coding assessments and all these things. So I think it will become harder to differentiate between the good and the really great people. And I think that will be harder to do
Mm.
as well. So look, I think it's going to be a challenging year for startups. And I include every business in that, to be honest. I don't think it's just specific to them. I mean, if you're a big,
Yeah.
big tech company, you don't probably have a lot of sympathy for many people. But outside of that, I think it will be challenging. But you asked, that's generally what I think. But there'll be some more in there. But you have to look at the newsletter for that.
Exactly. Ashley, I love the realness. To bring it back to a bit of a more optimistic and positive note, Color and Tech, you've partnered with some awesome companies like Google and Microsoft. From your experience, what advice would you give on leveraging those kind of partnerships to get the most out of them? But even like just getting your foot in the door to even discuss potential collaborations, like what
It's
advice
all
can you
come
give on
through
that?
kind of networking as one sense. So being in the spaces, meeting the people there, and spending time. Like some of the partnerships that we've had, they're great brands, great names, great organizations, but they've taken years. Sometimes people think about like sales
Wow,
cycle. I won't say who, but one of our partners, I would argue, I've been working on that for 4 years before it happened. Um,
that's crazy.
but that's the hustle. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you want to, then that's what you got to do. It's not always quick and easy, and I think that's kind of what I was saying before. It took me 4 years to even go full time on the organization. Like, it's sometimes these things do take time. They're not quick bang and easy to do. It's hard to work with big companies in terms of identifying the right people. So you need to build a broad network to help you sometimes even find who that right person is. And I think that's, at some point,
Right.
oh, can I not just type them in on LinkedIn? Potentially, yeah, and LinkedIn does help with some of this stuff, but you've got to build relationships, networks, especially if you're asking someone to do something for the first time. That takes a lot of
Yeah.
trust and a lot of commitment, and you recognize a lot of people putting their reputation, their neck, their head on the line by doing something that is new. And big organizations, especially, behavior can sometimes tend to not doing the innovative thing, not doing the new thing, not shaking things up because it's easier not to do something than to do something. I don't get me wrong, for all the great people we work with, there, probably another X amount of people that I'd love to work with that we haven't or don't, or got, people have, turned down the opportunity at that moment. So, so
Mm.
yeah, I think building a network is really important and being in those spaces, and you've got to put in a lot of the groundwork in order to do that. Showing up, being committed, and doing value. I think I said this to like one of the young people that I do some mentoring with. I was like, "You're too transactional. Every time I look at my WhatsApp, you're asking for something." I was just like, "No, like even if I can help you, I'm not now. And part of the reason I'm not going to is because it's too transactional. It's got you have to
Mm.
build relationships with people, because yeah, you might want
Yeah.
to get something, but that might not be possible. That's not the only value that someone can bring. That's not the only reason to spend time talking to somebody. And um and yeah, people can see through that. And sometimes the transaction is great, and
Mm.
sometimes it works, and that's what you need, and you can do that. But you've got to be able to flex and nuance and understand that. So yeah, I think building the network and investing in it properly, regardless of, I don't know whether that
Mm.
person I met 3 months ago in 2 years' time is going to do something X, but those things have happened in my journey, and therefore they're really important to do. You just don't know, and you can't necessarily attribute every single thing you do to one particular thing, but the momentum of doing them, and maybe you can attribute it, but it might take 3 years. But when you can, you'll be like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
glad I did that. So yeah.
Thank you for being real and honest about that, because when people see successful organizations partnering with huge brands or whatever, they automatically think, oh, who got them that introduction? And like it happens over and then I'm like, bang, yes, let's do it. And it's true, like you might end up speaking to someone for 7 years on and off, and then eventually something happens. Like people forget that we're all human and we all kind of want that connection. And sometimes it's not just like, hey, can you get me in the door? Hey, can you do this for me?
Yeah, and like
It's
I'd
a
say,
lot.
like a lot of our successes have come ironically kind of inbound, and I think that's partly because people see that we are doing the work. People see that we have been doing
Yeah.
it, whether they're working with us or not, and they see it, they feel it, they hear it, they get told it, and then they want to find out more. And like sometimes those are people that we don't know, or people we'd love to know and haven't got a connection with. But I think in one of our earliest kind of partnerships, it comes back to some of that philanthropy stuff I was doing. Like people just saw that, they knew that I was associated with it. So when someone was looking to do something and then I was involved, it wasn't a surprise, and some of that trust had already been built because,
Mm.
like, regardless of whether we're supporting it or not, they're doing it anyway. And actually, that builds a bit of trust. You build trust through the action, you build trust through the commitment, you build trust through telling your story, you build trust through doing stuff which isn't just transactional. It's like, I'm letting you know this just so you see. So, yeah, who knows? 2 years down the line, where you're like, oh, how did that happen? Or tell me about that. Or actually, got a bit of budget. I'd love to do something similar now. Can we talk about that? Well, yeah, like, but,
Mm.
yeah. So, all of these sorts of stuff.
Yeah. Is the tech industry kind of small as well, in the sense that most people know each other, or like you're only ever a few connections away from
Uh,
someone, or no? Or
yeah,
is it huge?
ish. It's kind of hard to say because like I feel like quite well connected, so I don't feel that far away from anybody. But I
Okay.
don't know if that's like again me being like, oh look at me or something like that. I'm not I'm not trying to like ego bait myself. I'm not one of those people. Oh look at my million followers, blah blah blah. Like I don't have that anyway. Like, do you know what I
Don't
mean? I
think
don't
you are,
have them
don't
anyway.
worry.
I don't have them. So, but but yeah, like I kind of feel like, look, I suppose the big companies dominate so much of the output in terms of like what's going on in terms of uh the tech that we use in terms of big tech. Then you've got a group of venture capitalists that generally do a disproportionate level of funding to the startup scenes, and again, those are
Mm.
quite concentrated. The big funds people know who they are, the medium funds people know who they are, and it's all quite small. So yeah, I feel like
Mm.
reputation can carry as well because people know each other.
Yeah. That's what it's like in the media industry. That's why I just wanted to ask. I wonder if it's the same in tech, where it's like, oh, well, this person said this about this person, and yeah, that's interesting to know. um, you spoke about putting in the work. Can you reveal any of the Colour and Text 2025 plans? I know you guys have a newsletter. You obviously have the Black and Tech Fest, or Black Tech Fest. Sorry. Tell me, are there anything else coming up
Um,
that you can tell us
yeah, so
about?
there'll be two things that I'll do. So one is kind of stuff that you mentioned. So on BTF, like we had BTF this year, and there were a few challenges, shall I say? Like some of our queues were longer than they should have
Okay.
been, put it like that. So one of the things that is so unsexy, so unglamorous, but its definition of putting in the work is we are doing so much groundwork to make sure that just the operations are flawless as much as we can, and that we are just
Right.
improving that. And like as I said, it's the unglamorous stuff. It's the stuff that people probably won't even notice or see or say thank you if it's done, but the stuff that really matters. um, sorry, excuse me. So I think that's one of the things that we're doing. And that's kind of what I mean is, again about like that, because that's the stuff that will take calls and calls and calls and hours and hours and hours, and people don't see, people don't know, people don't understand the process of, people don't know the logic behind. But that's putting in the work, and like that's knowing what you need to do and doing it well. And it's not the big glamourous glitzy thing, but it's actually some of the cool bread and butter which people do need to do. And then the second thing is we're doing a lot on AI. So look, it's taken, what is it, X amount of minutes now. I don't know. I'm not looking at the clock, but I eventually mentioned it. So there's the bingo card. But yeah. So we have started a lot of planning work on basically we're going to go around the country and we're going to train as many people as we can on AI.
Nice.
Oh, let me get some water.
Take your time. Drink some water.
But
Yeah, yeah, take your time. You've done amazing, by the way, like
Yeah,
40
I know.
minutes
I was
of
like,
you
where did
and
this come
coughed.
from? Could have done that in my meeting this morning. Gosh. Um, no, so yeah, so we are going to go around the country and train a lot of people on AI. We've got some really great funding from a number of different organizations, people like Juniper Networks, Google Org, um, ranging for a few other folks as well are involved. But fundamentally, the idea is how do we bring up a base level of understanding within our community and for pockets of community that aren't within our community but will benefit from that and actually teach them about some of the fundamentals of AI, get them certified and get them doing that. Then how do we build on that? How do we support businesses to use it in order to get themselves doing what they want to be doing? And can we actually be teaching, coaching, building with for, there's lots of exciting things which we're looking at, which AIs are going to enable us to do. But yeah, fundamentally back to that kind of programmatic kind of part of the journey of the three things I said we do. Yeah, we're still going to do the events. We still will always do over content, but we're doing a lot more on the programmatic in terms of how we are going to support people to upskill, and yeah, we literally want thousands of people by the end of the year to say they have learned about XYZ and got, a certified qualification basically on some of this stuff thanks to Color and Tech.
Love that. And if people want to follow that journey, are you on social media?
Yeah,
Where can people
so
find you?
the best place to find out about all of that stuff is, well, a few different places. So yeah, social media is one of them. Color and Tech is a handle, apart from on X, but we're not really fans of X. They don't really use it anymore, so you don't need to worry about that.
X
Yeah, you
is a
don't need
bit
to worry about that one.
crazy.
But if you type in Color and Tech on like LinkedIn, Instagram, less so TikTok as well. But you might hear a bit on there too. So those are the two which you should definitely see us on. Um,
Are you guys dancing on TikTok
yeah,
or just
that's the
keeping it
problem with
tech?
it, really, because I am not going to be the person dancing, and therefore, who is doing what on TikTok? So, we don't want to do anything and do it badly. And we know there's loads of
Mm.
great things that we could be doing. But everything has a trade-off, and me and dancing isn't the one that I'm willing to do. So,
Don't underestimate the power of a TikTok dance. The most successful ones are not always
yeah,
good
I don't
dancers. That's
underestimate
all
the
I'm going to
power of it, but that's
say.
not what I want to get known for. So, so so
So
that's
carry on.
social for sure is definitely one thing. The second place, and actually the better place, is our newsletter. And I say that because the reason we started the Color Tech newsletter and started writing it before we, ever turned over any dollars really. Part of the reason is because people always come to me, Dion, and oh, do you know a job in tech, or can you help me, or I'm looking for a co-founder. And I'll be real, I hate those questions. So I'm not a recruiter. Like, do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Oh, you want me to find a
read the
bouncer?
room.
You just want me to do your job for you. Like, do you know what I mean? Or like, I can't do those things. But I didn't want to ever, as I said, say no. So what I will say now to people is, look, everything I know and everything I see is in there. So if I know that people are hiring
Nice.
between, not just my newsletter, 'cause I've got colleagues who write theirs as well. Every job opportunity we see
Yeah.
are in our newsletters. They don't ask me for a job if you're not looked at my newsletter. If it's not in there, I ain't got one. I ain't seen one. So do you know what I mean? That's the truth. Yeah. If you want a co-founder, like I run programs where we support entrepreneurs. That's what I can do. I can't do the other stuff. I've done the bit that I can do.
Yeah.
So if people want to find out about the AI stuff, the newsletter is the best part because that's where we put all the information about everything that's going on. That's where you'll find out first. Some stuff we actually put in the newsletter and it gets so oversubscribed we don't even put on the socials because we don't want to disappoint people
Wow.
if we can't serve
Mm.
everybody. And sometimes our partners just ask us to email it. They don't even want to promote it on socials. So genuinely,
Wow. So how do
yeah.
people, sorry to interrupt, how do
So
people sign up to this newsletter? Like
colourandtech.org
how do they
is the website /newsletter.
hmm
That's it. So yeah, or you
Nice.
literally type a Color Tech, search engine of choice, click on the link, go to the homepage. There'll be a button there on the newsletter. So yeah, like just do that. Those are the key ways to really find out what we're up to.
And my last question, Ashley, I ask this to every Nexus Talks participant, anyone who comes on. What does authenticity mean to you, and how important is it for the brand you've built, your career, and everything that comes with it?
Oh yeah, really big question. Yeah, I mean,
I know.
it kind of means being a few things, and I think I've learned over the years, like the challenges of that as well, because you want to be, say, yourself, or you know, you want to say, oh, you bring your whole self to work. That's been a phrase which people have often heard, but like, you know, when you're a leader, like you don't want to always like do that. That's not appropriate. Like sometimes you want to cheer people up because, you know, morale's not there, or, you know, you don't want to worry people even though you're worried. Like, do you know what I mean? So I think
Yeah.
authenticity to an extent is also just, you know, carrying and owning your own decisions as much as much as it is. I don't necessarily think it's just about like, oh well, you know, if I'm happy today, you're gonna see me happy, and if you're not, then I'm not. Like, do you know what I mean? Or I want to wear a hoodie to work, so that's what I'm doing. No, I think it kind of means owning a bit of kind of like the decisions that you make, even if you do need to do things that don't come naturally. But you know, I think if you can communicate that with conviction and honesty, then like, I think you can still be authentic, even if you are doing something which doesn't necessarily feel like it comes naturally, or is kind of the default for you.
Hmm.
And I think that's super important as a leader as well, especially. So yeah, I also feel like you know, it goes back to the things that I spoke about before about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. All these words is kind of like making sure that you are genuine in terms of, you know, you have an open mind and open heart to embracing kind of, you know, difference. I think that's important way to be authentic. You know, I think, you know, we can see companies that, you know, say X and Y and Z and then don't necessarily carry their values through. Or, you know, I don't, they're not their values in the first place, so they can't carry them through. So carry the statements through to be values. So, you know, I think without wanting to like ramble, I think that it's bound up with some of those ideals around like, you know, honesty, openness, the appreciativeness of yeah, inclusion, belonging, equity, diversity in all its forms.
Ashley, thank you so much. I've genuinely enjoyed this conversation so much and learning about color in tech. This went in a completely different way to how I expected the chat to be. I thought I was going to be sitting there the whole time being like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what that is. But you were so cool with the explanation and so clear and so real. So I
No,
really,
I
really
appreciate
appreciate
that,
it.
and thank you. And I've enjoyed this too. You remember my croaky voice and
Good.
everything. So no, I massively appreciate this.